an important question, and I want you to answer it honestly. Why are we doing these shows?
We're doing these shows because we're going to do this, and we've done this before the technology allowed us to do these shows. For 30 years now, you and I have sat and discussed and reviewed, pretty much sat around and reviewed albums on weekend nights when other boys and girls are out doing whatever they do now these days. We're sitting up and discussing artists across all the gamuts and genres of music. So why not share it with the world since we can?
I agree with you. But the other reason we do this is because sometimes you have an album that you're so excited about. You want to share your love of that album with the world, right?
This is true.
And we've done that. We've done that.
We did that with me. We did that with my album.
Which album?
Vivid.
Of course. But there are albums that have such an impact on your life that they change your world.
Absolutely.
And that's what this album that we're talking about today did for me. And that's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars by David Bowie.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, that was a long title just to read. and I've always called this album Ziggy Stardust.
As most of the world, yep.
Right. And so, but there is an official title to the song. And I first bought this album when I was 15 years old.
Oh, snap.
It was a cassette.
Of course.
It wasn't a record, because I was still buying records when I was 15.
Yeah, we were.
But this was a cassette. And I remember being with my brother-in-law at the time, driving around in his truck, listening to Ziggy Stardust. I remember where I bought it. I bought it at the Bass Exchange on Bass.
Nice.
And just listening to this tape over and over again, trying to uncover the secrets of David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. Before this, I had discovered the Beatles, and they had impacted and changed my life from a musical point of view. And now I'm discovering Bowie at the peak of his powers. And I felt like if there was ever a David Bowie album you and I should talk about, it's this one, the one that means the most to me. Because sometimes when you and I talk about albums, they're not the best albums by that artist. They're the ones that mean the most to us. Would you agree?
That's true. No, that is absolutely true. I think every album we've done so far had a significance to us, because otherwise, why would we really talk about it? We could talk about it, but we're passionate about it because it means something to us. Now, I'm glad that you brought this album up, because my exposure to Bowie, 80s, MTV, and then retro. Again, this album, like I was telling you earlier, it's been a retrograde of his career for me. So I had to go back in time.
No, I get it, man. You and I, when listening to this album today, we're listening to it from two different places. You, for someone who is kind of exploring Bowie that's not in your time zone, right?
Yeah.
For me, someone who has listened and did the deep dive on this album for 30 straight years.
Yeah.
It's one of those few albums that I never get tired of listening to.
See, and that's awesome.
Every single song on this album I have listened to nonstop. I say nonstop, but you know what I mean. I've listened to this continuously for 30 years. And there's always something that makes me feel like I'm listening to it for the first time.
That's what I love about music. It never gets old.
Right. Now, this album was recorded around the same time as Bowie's previous album, Hunky Dory.
Yeah, they wrote the songs during the same time, so it's the same batch. Like, I know the Beatles had done that. Van Halen did that with album one and two. That's like the only example I come off the top of my head. Where, and Hootie. But yeah, so you hear these songs and you're like, wow, how they crank these albums out back to back. Well, because they wrote both albums pretty much at the same time.
Right. And the crazy thing is both albums, Hunky Dory and Ziggy Stardust, by rock critics, by David Bowie fans, 5-star albums, the cream of the crop, complete classics. Okay?
Cool.
That's what these albums are. 45, 50 years later, this is like the peak of Bowie's creative career. And, for most people. I mean, there are other people who love his Berlin output more, whatever.
Yeah. And funny you say that. As listening to this and preparing for this, I can hear how that writing session, the creation of those two albums, that is where Bowie found his musical voice. And by that, because you'll hear me say this on air, because we discuss this time and time again. As an artist, as a musician, the ultimate goal of an artist in their medium is to have their voice where they are easily defined, regardless of whether you like them or not, to where you can hear it and be like, oh, I know who that is, because that's their voice, that's their identity. And this is where he defines it. And you hear it from here all the way to Black Star, my friend.
Now, I want to tell a funny story about preparing for this show. Because I told you, I said, hey, we're going to do Ziggy Stardust, David Bowie. This album means a lot to me. Make sure you listen to it. And the day we were supposed to record this show, this was supposed to be, what, week number 5?
Yeah.
Right? Or something like that?
Yeah.
The day I said, hey, Ken, you ready to do this? He's like, I thought you said this was a classic album. And at first I was like, well, we're going to fight. And I mean, I know you're a trained killer and all.
But this is war now.
This is war. Okay? And you're like, man, I knew Space Oddity, but I didn't know any of those other hippie songs or whatever you told me. And I was like, Space Oddity? We're doing Ziggy Stardust, man. You're like,
I was so relieved.
Oh, that Space album.
I was like, thank goodness, because if Space Oddity was the album that defined and revitalized your childhood, and I was like, man, well, we gonna need to talk.
But thankfully we're not. And we could happily do Space Oddity, the single, because before this album, David Bowie was kind of a one-hit wonder. Space Oddity was the hit because, it was the year of the moon landing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then kind of a bunch of flops.
Yeah. Well, like I'd mentioned after that misunderstanding / debacle, these two albums, listening to Space Oddity, I can hear an artist who has ambitions of conquering the world. This album is the plan to conquer the world, and he carried it out.
Right. And it was weird because even though Hunky Dory was released 6-7 months before Space Oddity, before Ziggy Stardust. Oh my God, we're going to start reviewing Space Oddity today. Before Ziggy Stardust, Hunky Dory was released, but it wasn't a hit. It was another in a string of flops.
Yeah.
But Ziggy Stardust becomes this huge album, this huge movement, to coincide with the glam movement in England. Top 10 album, had a top 10 single. Okay.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Hunky Dory starts climbing up the charts, and it hits number 3 in the British charts, because in America, both albums were flops. However, because of Bowie's ability to defy time, right? You cannot say this album sounds like the 70s. No, it just sounds like Bowie.
Yeah.
Okay. But Bowie at a certain moment in his life. This album eventually went platinum in America as well. It just took a little bit longer, but it was not like a top 40 record or anything.
Yeah. And that makes sense, since you, again, being a retrograde to all this, the different artists that we've grown up listening to here in the States who've always cited Bowie as an influence from the 70s. So that makes sense, because if the album wasn't big here and it was an underground thing, because when you're a teenager, at least we did back then, I don't know what kids do now, but you took the music was personal. You took it personally. So I could see the appeal and why, looking back now, the artists that we grew up listening to were citing Bowie and this period as a huge influence to him.
Well, and he's rock and roll's chameleon. And we're going to talk more about that today on this album. But he can go from being this hippie, flower power child of the 60s into this glam rock god, into this coked out, super slick white soul brother, right? When he had his first number one hit in America with Fame.
Fame, yeah. And then to, hi, I'm David Bowie. I'm the third smoothest man walking the planet.
But even before that, he has his little trip in Berlin where he's hanging out with
Ziggy, Iggy Pop.
Who's the Roxy Music? Brian Eno.
Brian Eno.
And producing those albums. Yeah. And so he just keeps redefining himself. Once you try to put a label on him, he's like, hey, hold on.
He's out. He bounces out that box.
I'm going somewhere else.
Spin move.
Yeah. So let's do what you and I do, which is dig into the songs. But before we start with song one, I'm going to kind of explain how I'm going to approach these songs. Like I said, I've been listening to these songs for 30 years.
Yeah.
And in the loosest sense of the word, this is a concept album. I don't care what the critics say the songs mean. I don't care what Bowie himself said what the songs mean, okay, or what his inspirations were. I'm going to let the people that are listening to this show know what they mean to me, how I interpreted these songs.
Yes.
And how I see the story of Ziggy forming in my head as the record plays on.
There we go.
So let's go with song one. The first song on the album is called 5 Years, and it feels like a Lou Reed song. I'm pretty sure he was hanging out with Lou Reed at the time. On Hunky Dory, he wrote a song called Queen Bitch, and Queen Bitch was dedicated, I think, to Lou Reed, or in that whole scene, that Andy Warhol scene.
Yeah.
And it feels like a Lou Reed album. In fact, Lou Reed's most popular album was produced by David
Bowie
and Mick Ronson. So anyway, what do you think about 5 Years?
So what grabbed me about this song was the minimalism about it. So we do this. Every album we've discussed, what's the first thing we talk about? A strong opener, something that comes and punches you in the face. This is a drastic change, which is a great thing, because up until now, that was the thing. All right, we're going to hit strong, first song. And so by it not being that way, supports the concept album theory.
Not only that, Ken, but it builds. Because by the end of the song, he's screaming 5 years.
Yeah.
He's screaming.
Yep.
But at first, it's like a spoken word song.
Yeah. You just have the drums. And a sparse piano.
Yep.
Just to give you, the... Yeah. And
but it's building. Because the instruments are slowly adding on to the textures.
And the cyclical progression. So... It just rolls and moves along and builds and crescendos, and then at the end, 5 years.
Right, and we've talked about Space Oddity, and I love how when Bowie wants to take us to outer space, he makes us freak out with I call them the psychedelic orchestra, the psychedelic strings, because he'll use the string section to create this space atmosphere. Yeah. Right? This out of the world atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you hear it here. All Music, the website, who reviews a lot of music, I use them as a resource. Not so much for these shows, but to find more music and more music I should listen to. They describe this as easily one of the greatest album opening songs ever. We've heard some really great openers. Not only for the show, but just through our 30 years of friendship.
Yeah.
What do you think, man? One of the greatest ever?
I don't know about one of the greatest, but definitely one of the greatest attention getters. Because like I said, we're so used to everything just kicking the door right open.
In the middle of the road, yeah.
And he's like, hey, don't kick the door, turn the knob. The door's not locked. You don't have to kick it open to get inside.
But by the end of the song...
Oh, he's all up in there.
Yeah.
So it was a nice, subtle approach.
This was the one song that whenever I listened to as a kid, kind of fast forward. It was too adult for me.
Yeah.
But lately, I can't listen to Ziggy without it. I have to hear this lead into Soul Love, which leads into Moon Age, which leads into Star. I have to listen to them in progression.
And the great thing about this track, because if you don't catch it listening to this album, David Bowie is influenced by early rock and roll.
Yes. We're going to talk about it. Don't give it all away now.
And so this is where it starts. Because again, the progression, it's a typical early pop rock and roll progression. And it just rolls and rolls as the song builds. And so this is laying the groundwork for that.
Now, in the lyrics, this is a warning sign that the apocalypse is coming.
Yeah, 5 years left.
We have 5 years left.
Yeah.
That's it. 5 years left. Okay, before I tell my interpretation, okay, so let me ask you. We got 5 years left on this earth. What are you doing with it? Like, what are your goals? Okay, what? You're only giving me 5 years? What are you going to do with these 5 years left on earth?
Gonna run a couple marathons.
Really? You gonna stay in shape?
Yeah, and I'll probably stop fighting Salma Hayek and Halle Berry's advances.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Hey, got 5 years left, right? I guess I'll just let my guard down.
Okay. And me, I'm taking my keys. Hopefully in those 5 years, we still have gas left. I can put gas in my car, and I'm driving. And I'm driving everywhere I want to go. And that's what I'm doing. And I might meet some people along the way. Who knows? But I'm driving. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm stopping. But I'm driving. Wherever there's land and wherever there's a road, I'm driving it. That's it.
There we go. That's a song.
But that's
right
5
there.
years. But the lyrics for this song, really, there's some powerful images here. Okay, and they're actually quite specific. All right, if the black hadn't pulled her off, I think she would have killed them. A soldier with a broken arm, a cop knelt and kissed the feet of a priest, and the queer threw up at the sight of that. These are very specific moments that Bowie's describing in this song, right?
Yeah.
Of what people are doing when they've heard the news. Okay. For me, when I heard this, my interpretation was people aren't acting normal.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've kind of seen that, right?
Yeah,
when
we've seen
faced
that.
with adversity, people get stupid.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this song is saying. We only have 5 years left. People are freaking out, which we're going to talk about, that freak out. Hold on, song 3. But anyway, I kind of agree with you. It's not one of my favorite opening tracks of all time. It's just not.
Yeah.
But I can't listen to this album with
Oh
it.
yeah, it's needed.
It's necessary.
It's necessary for this album.
Right.
You could not open this album with a kicking the door open.
But anyway, so in the story of Ziggy Stardust, Ziggy hasn't come to Earth yet. Okay? But Earth knows its time is short. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's go to the second song, Soul Love. Now, this one is Bowie saying, look, I am a ladies' man.
Yeah, this is where his soul, his R&B love starts to seep out.
Oh, right. This is the hint of what's to come for the Young Americans album.
Yep.
Because in 1975, he went straight soul.
Yeah.
And
He
released
wasn't
Young
playing
Americans.
anymore. He's just like, yep, I'm here.
That's it. And there are so many things happening here because right as he starts, it's that soul groove, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a Latin flavor kind of going on. Okay, what do you call it?
On the next, it's the laid groundwork for the Bowie groove.
It's laying the groundwork. But once he hits that chorus, it's total rock bombast, glam rock, Bowie as rock and roll star.
Yeah, which is what makes it great. That it's just a hint, like you said, of what's to come in the future. It's like, yeah, I like this R&B. I think I will dabble with it.
And we talk about this R&B, but what helps give it that vibe is Bowie's playing the saxophone. And Bowie was a pretty great sax player.
Yeah, he grew up playing sax.
Like, that's his instrument.
Yep,
So when you listen to a lot of Bowie hits, Changes, he's playing the saxophone. He's playing it throughout this album. Like, that's his thing, but it helps give it that R&B atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
I would also say that one of the things that helps this song and almost any great R&B song, as you and I have talked about so much, is a killer bass groove.
Yes.
Okay, and the bassist for the Spiders from Mars is a guy named Trevor Bolder. And after he left Bowie's band, or Bowie fired him, whatever happened, he actually joined Uriah Heep, which was an old 70s rock band.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he lays down a sick bass groove in this song. I mean, I never paid attention to it before because it wasn't until the last year or so that I really recognized, wow, these bass lines are killer. I like just have this love of the bass all of a sudden.
That's funny you bring that up. I'm going to point that up on side 2. It caught my attention.
Okay, well, it caught my attention here. And so, for me, lyrically, this is post-war Britain. Soul love, right? It's meeting your girlfriend in the shop. It talks about, in the very first line, stone love, she kneels before the grave, right? Basically, your love is demonstrated on a gravestone.
Yeah.
And a brave son who gave his life to save the slogans that hovers between the headstone and her eyes. I mean, that's powerful. That is about as strong of a reflection on war and the cost of war that has ever been written.
Oh, yeah. And what's something that
it's a mother's love, bro.
Yeah, man. We here in the States don't necessarily think about because we don't have to. We haven't had wars fought on our land.
Right.
And I bring this up because Bowie, Stones, the Beatles, that generation.
They're all wartime babies. Man.
Exactly. And one of the things I remember the first time I went to England, I'm there in a little town looking around, and this place was bombed during World War II. Yeah, they've rebuilt.
Some of it.
Exactly. Some of it. Not all of it. So you still have the remnants of World War II that they grew up around living in. You know what I'm saying? That played an impact on them. So when he writes something like this, as strong as it is, that's his life right there.
Right. And for me, the lyrics, this is a reflection of the times they're living in before Ziggy arrives. This is going to the shop with your girl, right? A boy and a girl fall in love. A mother mourning her son.
Yeah.
Okay? This is people worshiping God, right? In the last verse. Soul love, the priest that tastes the word and told of love. And how my God on high is all love. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is like a picture in time before this huge moment arrives when we meet life from beyond earth. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
I've always taken it that way. Oh no, the world's going to end. But this is the snapshot of the post-war period we live in. But then we go to song 3, Moon Age Daydream.
Yeah.
Ziggy's still not on Earth yet. This is Ziggy looking down on Earth, saying, you don't even know what's about to hit you. You're about to meet an alien, and you're not going to know how to react.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of I'm talking about the lyrics.
No, man, that's perfect, because this is where where you brought it up. This is the song where I'm like, oh, this is that Bowie groove. This is where, how I stated earlier, this batch of songs, this album, this is where he found his voice, the Bowie groove. This is where he found it. And it is laid down.
But hold on, man. Before you even hit that groove, that initial 2 power chord riff that just comes in, it comes in so hard. Like that is heavy metal Bowie.
Yeah.
You know? And then the first line, I'm an alligator, I'm a rock and rollin' bitch for you. He's just coming in hard, hitting those chords as hard as he can. And then you think, oh my God, that Bowie's gonna rock out. And then he lays in that groove. Why? Because he's David Bowie and he doesn't do anything in a normal manner.
Yeah. The great thing, this song is where I hear it and I'm like, okay, this is where David Bowie became comfortable in his skin. Because I will harp on this the entire podcast. This is the album. This is where I hear him like, yep, this is where he found his voice. This is when all the stars aligned. David Bowie, and yes, here I am.
And I would say this album, along with Hunky Dory, taken as a couple.
Yeah. Because again, he wrote both albums the same time, so that batch.
Right, and we mentioned that he was a chameleon, right?
Yeah.
He's a chameleon in this song because he's the singer, but then he says, "Wait, I already told you I'm a great sax player. I'm going to do a sax solo. I got Mick Ronson, a great guitar legend, on the side here, but I'm going to do a sax solo. But while I'm playing the sax solo, I'm going to record a penny whistle or flute solo to play along my sax solo."
Yeah. And that was cool.
One song, man. He could have done a penny whistle in another song, a saxon soul love, let Mick Ronson rock out. No, he said, no, we're going to have all of it in one song while we're laying down the Bowie groove.
And the cool thing, I'm glad you brought up Mick Ronson, because middle of the song, he is an influential guitar god, if you will. You would figure, okay, this is where you put your guitar solo in the middle of the song. No. And also, this is the first appearance on the album of Mick Ronson, Guitar God. 3 songs in, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Normally,
because he's been laying the foundation before.
Because he was the foundation, and here's like, all right, which was perfect that it's at the end of the track. I was listening to it and I was like, man. As I've listened to this album, I think, I wonder what different artists think about different tracks, because I could hear that vibe, and I wondered if Carlos Santana, what he thought about this album, because feel me out here now.
I'm listening.
The Bowie groove, so you have this groove laid down, and it's going because it's built up, and Mick's just playing on top of it, and he's lyrically playing on top of it. He's not needlessly playing a bunch of notes. He's playing a melody. He's saying something.
But what he's saying, and you hear this in the lyrics, where David Bowie at the very end, he's like, freak out, far out, in out. Mick Ronson is freaking out. He's doing this psychedelic space age freak out. Like you said, with this melody that just carries along, right?
And so he's saying something.
So Bowie's projection of Ziggy about to invade this world, right? I'm a space invader.
Yeah.
I'm a rock and roller coming for him. I'm a mama papa coming for you. Okay? And you're like, wait, which one are you? Are a mama or a papa? But that's Bowie. Because at this entire period in Bowie's career is what we could call his androgynous period.
Yeah.
When he released the Man Who Sold the World album in England, not in America, because, America's too prude for that. But in England, he's wearing a man dress. He called it a man dress. He's wearing a dress on the album cover.
Yeah.
Easily been mistaken as a woman. Okay. Here, he's introduced, the Beatles, the Stones, whoever, 1960s, kids growing their hair long, right?
Yep.
Now Bowie's saying, man, my hair's not that long, but I'm wearing makeup. Okay? And I want to talk about that when we talk about another song. But he wasn't the first person to wear makeup.
This is true.
On stage. Yep. But he's the one who's going to say, you don't know where I'm coming from. You don't know if I'm gay. You don't know if I'm straight. I'm gonna be gay, but I'm gonna be married to Angela Bowie.
Yeah.
Right? In an interview, he said, I'm gay.
Yep. Leading up to the release of this album.
So what happened?
Oh, it was hindsight, history. It was a perfectly planned, I won't say ploy, but part of his plan. He does the interview, says he's gay, gay community takes him in, controversy sells. Drops the album, the tour, boom. And it was perfect because, as you stated earlier, up until now, he'd just been a one-hit wonder. Honky Dory didn't go anywhere. And so he intentionally created Ziggy Stardust. And what's a good way to start over and to set a definite beginning? Boom. He did it right there.
And there were rumors of him sleeping with Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger, yeah.
You know, but he's married and he has a kid, Zoe Bowie.
Yeah.
Was the kid's name. And so this is one of those weird cases where we have, by all observations, a straight rock star, a married straight rock star, who then went to go marry one of the prettiest models in the world.
Yeah, very
okay.
notably.
Saying he's gay, when most gay frontmen, Freddie Mercury, Elton John,
yeah,
were portraying themselves as straight.
Yeah, hell, even Little Richard.
Even Little Richard. Yeah. And we're not passing judgment. We're just simply making an observation.
Yeah.
That Bowie says, oh, y'all are going to go right, I'm going left.
And it was calculated. Everything about this album is calculated, and I love it because it worked.
Right. And for me, when we get back into Will's idea of what Ziggy Stardust means, this is Ziggy's point of view. This is like Ziggy singing. I'm an alligator. I'm a mama papa coming for you. I'm the space invader, right?
Yeah.
This is him about to invade this planet of organisms, and he can't wait to freak them out. So he says, freak out, far out, far out. You guys don't know what's about to hit you.
Yeah.
You're all depressed about the end of the world, but you don't know what's coming before the end of the world.
I feel you. Going out with a bang.
Do you see where my head's working
Yeah.
at? That's to me where this song, he's still not on Earth. But then we get to song 4, Starman, which was the top hit on the album, okay? This was recorded to be a hit. It was included so that the album would have a hit on the album.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so like kind of goes back to what you're saying. Everything's calculated. Like it fits the theme of the album, but this might as well be called Space Oddity Part 2.
And that's funny because I hear this song, and this is the perfect blend of Ziggy and Space Oddity.
Yes, I love this song. And to me, it's more pop-oriented than Space Oddity.
Yeah.
But it's the spiritual successor.
Yeah.
But I consider it like pure pop perfection. Like everything that's in this song, all the bells and whistles, it's what I want to hear when I hear a song. It's just, this is what I love about music and talking about music. It's all wrapped up in Starman.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was a top 10 hit in the UK, top 10 hit in France, not a hit in the US. Remember, Bowie still hasn't had a hit in the US at this time. And it's probably my favorite song on the album. It's probably one of my favorite, if not favorite, songs in Bowie's entire repertoire.
Wow.
It really is, man. It's just that one song that I can listen to and never get tired of. I say that about the whole album, but it's true.
Yeah. Wow, your love of this track, honestly, brother, I did not see that coming.
Yeah,
I'm pleasantly surprised.
What's crazy, and I was reading up on this, and you know, usually when we read up on it, it means we're reading Wikipedia. Not the case on this. I love this album so much. I have Bowie books that discuss only Ziggy Stardust. They're right here on the desk. Kim, look, they're right there. I just dropped them on the desk. I have books just on this album that analyze this album because I love this album so much. I want to know as much about this album as possible. So there were a couple of things I found out. So you know, like when there's that break right before the chorus, the dun 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 dun. He lifted it directly from the Supremes. You Just Keep Me Hanging On. Okay?
Love it.
The way he sings the word Starman, there's a Starman.
Which is the throwback.
It's Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Yeah.
Somewhere over the rainbow. That's all he's doing. He's paying tribute to, you know, the sounds that he loves, the people that he grew up with, whether it's, you know, Judy Garland or, you know, the Supremes in the 60s.
Perfect.
And he does it throughout the whole album, you know?
And that is so cool.
Did you know any of that before
No,
I just told you?
I did not know that. And that makes sense because, again, that generation of the Brits, they grew up listening to musicals, which I also believe is why they were such great songwriters.
Right. And something you notice on this album, and we touched on it, is that it has those great string arrangements. Like I think it was Tony Visconti produced the album. I'm not sure about that, but the strings never overwhelm the songs. We've heard songs, we've heard albums where it's like, man, if they would have just stripped it bare and like taken the strings out or not given it the Phil Spector production, the song would have felt more organic or more intense or whatever word you want to use. Whereas when they add layers of strings on Bowie songs, to me, it gives them more substance because it's because the strings aren't overbearing. They're part of the song. Yeah, they don't drown the song out.
It's very textural.
Right?
In adding and building to the song.
Do you see where I'm coming from there?
Yeah.
What about you? Like Starman, like I said, this is my favorite song on the album. Where do you land on this?
Because I know that's why I was surprised. I can't say, well, it is not my favorite on the album. It's not my least favorite, though, on the album.
Okay, because then we were going to end the show real quick.
No, like I said, I heard it, and I took it for its musical appreciation. I'm like, okay, now knowing the bit of him throwing the homage to his idols, I guess, if you will, they grew up listening to. That, I thought, was pretty cool, because everyone during this period of time, this generation, they all have a love of Motown. So to hear that he just decided to lift it and put it in there, oh yeah, that's awesome. That's major props.
So Ken, lyrically, to me, this is when people are hearing about the Starman, about Ziggy coming down, when they hear on the news that the alien is coming to Earth. But you can't really announce it because if you're like, hey, did you hear about the alien? People are going to think you're crazy. Now, one of my favorite stories about Ziggy Stardust, it's actually tragic, but he actually wrote a song about it on the Man Who Sold the World album called All the Madmen. His brother was put into an insane asylum.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he actually wrote a song as a tribute to his brother because of that. But there's a line in this song, don't tell your papa or he'll get us locked up in fright. There's a couple of ways you can take that. Like, hey, he's going to lock us up in the cellar or the basement to keep us safe.
Or get us institutionalized.
Or get you institutionalized, exactly. And so I always look at this as like, that's Bowie playing with words.
Wow.
On a pop song.
That's interesting. In preparation, I'd read that one of the characters that Bowie had based Ziggy off of was a British pop star who had went crazy, whatnot, and he had met the guy.
Yes.
After he went crazy, and so hearing this story, I'm like, well, I wonder if he was in the same place with Bowie's brother. Yeah, in order for him to meet him, because at first I read it, I was like, okay, he's a pop star, so he probably worked an angle to meet the guy. Now it's possible, it's totally feasible that he just had me visiting his brother and, oh, hey, type deal.
Right, and this is also the second mention of Far Out. We heard it at the end of Moon Age Daydream, and he says, hey, that's far out, so you heard it too, hoo-hoo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Bowie was just kind of capitalizing on some of the popular slang terms at the time. But at the same time, you have this guy coming from outer space. That's far out. Right? Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on to the last song on side one, It Ain't Easy. Now, this is actually a cover song.
Yeah.
Bowie didn't write this song. All right. And it was from a guy named Ron Davies, not Ray Davies.
That's from the Kinks. It's not the Kinks. Davies, yeah. So this guy was American.
It was covered by Three Dog Night in 1970, and Three Dog Night was a huge band in the 70s.
Yep.
But man, I do not like this song unless David Bowie's singing it. If David Bowie's singing it, I'm good, man. This is like his little nod to old country and western and blues.
Which I dug.
Did you like it?
Yeah, because I'm listening. I'm like, okay, yeah. Clearly, he did not write this song. Clearly, this song was written on the other side of the ocean here. And then that's what grabbed me. Because that's them giving their nod to what influenced them growing up. You know?
And there's all kinds of mentions in the lyrics. The hoochie coochie woman. It ain't easy to get to heaven when you're going down. That's the blues, man. Selling your soul to the devil, right? Which we talked about.
Yeah.
So complete nod to the blues lyrically here. But this isn't Bowie's song. So I don't want to get hung up on the lyrics too much.
Yeah.
You know?
They did this song justice, man.
Right. Oh, easy. But for me, even though this is a cover, the reason it fits is because to me, we've talked about the world from the eyes of the kid who's narrating the album.
Yep.
We've seen it from the eyes of Ziggy. This is the everyday working class, everyday working man theme.
Gotcha.
Do you see where I'm coming from? In my head, this is the reaction, or not the reaction, but the way that the working class would react. They're not worried about a star, man. They're worried about feeding their families.
Yep.
Don't feed me that nonsense. Let me live my life. I don't believe in all that because Ziggy hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah.
Or he's arrived, but nobody believes it yet. I got to tend to these fields. I got to become salt of the earth. I don't have time for all that craziness.
Yeah.
That's what I come. And I've always felt that ever since I was a kid because I discovered this around the same time I discovered the Rolling Stones' Beggar's Banquet album, and they have a song called Salt of the Earth. All right.
Gotcha.
So anytime there's something that's working class, man, I connect it to this song or to that song off the Rolling Stones album. It's just something I can't escape. Must be my communist nature or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So this album, when I heard it, or this track, I'm
going.
like, wow, all right, this caught me out of left field. Didn't expect it. Because like I said, he definitely didn't write it. Definitely written in the States. And it grows on me because they own it. They do well with it. And then I was like, wow, this is a clever way to end side one.
Right.
You know.
It's a cliffhanger.
Yeah. And with your view, your story, your interpretation of this album, it makes sense. Because in case there's any kids listening to this, with your digital or whatever, we had to physically stop the album or the cassette, take it out, flip it, pick it up, flip it over. And so there's that time, that lapse of time where you're digesting. You've taken side one in, and now it's percolating, if you will. So you're
spoken like a true coffee lover.
Yes. You know what I'm saying? So now you're going for side two. You put it in and you prepare yourself. We would literally prepare ourselves when we would drop the needle or hit play. So this was a great way to set up for two.
I think I agree with you. It's not my favorite way to end a side because, like I said, I don't stop here. I don't look at this as the end of side one, right?
Yeah.
It's just in my mind, it's the song that plays before Lady Stardust. That's just the way it operates in my mind. I don't look at it as the end of side one. I just look at it as the song before Lady Stardust. Just the way I look at Starman as the song before It Ain't Easy. It's to me, they're all a part of one long continuous story that I've been weaving in my head for 30 years.
And I can see, because I was reading about how they refer to this as a rock opera, if you will. And listening to it and getting to this point, visualizing this on a stage, oh yeah, this is where, all right, this is the intermission, like at a musical. Boom, come back, side two.
Yeah, and it was the rock opera. It was Tommy, because The Who's Tommy, which we will never do a show. Actually, we could. We would just have to do it in 2 or 3 parts, or probably 2 parts.
Yeah.
Album 1, album 2. But they would have different characters singing.
Yeah.
Throughout the album. And that's how, like I said, I discovered Tommy around the same time too, man. Maybe a little bit earlier. I'm not sure. I'd have to look back. So in my head, it's just different characters that Bowie's performing as part of his little mini rock opera.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's end side one on a positive note
Yes.
and say that as a whole, side one is an amazing slice of rock and roll in terms of album sides, which
Yes.
we've discussed before. Last week we did Gladys Knight, side one of the most amazing side ones I've ever heard in my life. Okay, what about the side one here?
Personally, I feel side one is completely solid to the point, though it tells a story, each song can individually stand on its own, independent of the story.
I agree with you. Well, speaking of side two, the first song, and I think this is a beautiful way to open up a side, but I wasn't expecting it when I first heard it. Lady Stardust.
True. I felt the same way.
It's because it's such a pretty melody, it's such a beautiful ballad, but there's no balls to it. There's no punch in the gut in terms of power.
So when I heard this along those lines, I was like, oh, so this is Bowie meets Carole King.
How'd you get that?
Because it didn't have that punch, and it's a ballad, and Carole King ballads are, and plus it's a heavy piano with this song. So I'm like, okay, wow, this is Bowie, but it's pretty. And pretty in the 70s as far as piano ballads, Carole King.
Well, for me, this is the spotlight for David Bowie's voice.
Yeah.
Because David Bowie, we said he's a chameleon, but for me, his voice, it's really two voices. There's the baritone David Bowie, blue, electric, blue. And then there's this nasally, high-pitched David Bowie, right? Or this high-octave
Yeah,
David
he
Bowie.
made use of his instrument, yeah.
But he does have a range, though, and he can sing. So it's not like he's like Bob Dylan, who has kind of a horrible voice. It's just a unique voice.
Yeah. Matter of fact, my voice teacher when I was in school, she was a Bowie fan because of his voice. She
okay.
Yeah, and I was a classically trained opera singer, and she liked David Bowie.
Now, for me, I always look at this song as something that should have been a song that he featured for his entire career, because it's one of my favorite Bowie songs. This is probably my second favorite Bowie song. If not, sometimes if the mood hits me right, it's my favorite Bowie song.
Nice.
Okay? But I always wonder, like, because this whole album centers around this alien coming to perform for the masses, how you take a song like this and once you bring in, because I don't think you can end a concert like this, but if you put it in the middle, how do you bring them back up? You know, like as a performer, someone who has performed live and written songs and played ballads in the middle of your sets, how do you take someone down and then bring them back up?
Well, I think he did that well with side two. And by starting off with this, the only way to go is up.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
From an intensity standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you understand where I'm coming from? Because I saw Tom Petty in concert in 2007. I don't want to give too much away. But he played like 5 ballads in a row and completely lost me, man. I was ready to go home before the encore.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you should have, taken me down, brought me up. Take me on a roller coaster, man. Just, just don't push me off the mountain. Okay. But lyrically, for my interpretation, this is when Ziggy has arrived. Ziggy now looking like a woman, or you don't know what he is, right?
Yeah.
He's performing. The kids are going crazy for him, right?
Yep.
The girls are falling in love with him, and so are the guys, right? Everybody wants to be Ziggy.
Everyone loves him.
Okay. However, there's this underlying tension there. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Where, our kids might like you, but us uptight, strict, God-fearing mortals, we're not such big fans of you. Not really explicit in the lyrics. It's just that undertone. And that's how I've always interpreted this song, is that it's that ominous feel that, you may be a rock star, but we don't like rock stars in these parts.
Yeah, you're not fully accepted by us.
Do you see where I'm coming from?
Like it.
Yeah, and then Lady Stardust, this, androgynous alien, introducing himself on stage leads into the next song on side 2, which is Star. It's called Star. It's right there in the lyrics, Star.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways you can interpret that. I mean, the word star appears in Star, the song Rock and Roll Star, Starman, Ziggy Stardust, Lady Stardust. 4 songs of the 11 have the word star in the title. And that's not even mentioning Moon Age Daydream. Like, we're completely in outer space here.
Definitely keeping it astrological.
Absolutely. But this is about being a rock and roll star. This is where all those influences you were talking about. This is Little Richard tribute, the first androgynous, gay rock star, right? Is this Jerry Lee Lewis, him just banging on them keys? Where's it coming from? But this is that tribute to that era.
You're definitely hearing it. Matter of fact, when I heard this song along those lines, as I mentioned earlier, I wondered, what did Elton John and Bernie Taupin think about this album, this track? Because I could, chicken or the egg, don't know. But I wonder if this influenced them in any way at some point during their career. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that they bit off of it, but I'm like, wow, I could see them when this album dropped being like, hey, check this out. Oh, that's pretty dope. And, giving props to Bowie and appreciating it.
I'm sure there was some of that, but Elton John was the biggest artist of the early 70s.
Yeah, like I said, this definitely didn't change their trajectory or their lives, but I wonder what they thought of it.
Well, thankfully they're both still alive. We could probably
ask them.
I mean, we're not going to ask them, man. We're never going to get within 2 feet of Elton John, man.
Oh, that would be something if he got on and gave an answer.
Anyway, but think about this, Ken. How many kids have stayed up, whether it's practicing guitar, singing in front of a mirror, and just dreamed of being a rock and roll star?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what this is, right? And for me, lyrically, the narrator is so blown away by Ziggy and his performance that whatever he aspired to be before this, he now is dreaming of being a rock and roll star. He's talking about what all of his friends have done. Tony went to fight in Belfast, right? Bevan tried to change the nation, probably become a politician, right? He's saying, nah, man, I want to be a rock and roll star. How many kids, think about that, have actually just sat there and said, this is what I want to do. I want to perform in front of people.
Oh, yeah. Man, I'm in a punk band right now. And the leader of the band, his thing was, man, I saw it on TV and I knew I wanted to be in a band. I wanted a band. Yeah. And so, boom, there we are. Logos everywhere. And even myself as a kid growing up playing guitar, I'm like, oh, absolutely I want to do this up on stage. We've discussed it before. Even being on stage and the energy, and you feel it. And to be on a stage like Ziggy, where you're looking out at the ocean, a sea of people, as I call it. Oh my goodness, that amount of energy coming back at you, yeah, you feel it, you know it, and I'd say it's addictive, but not in a bad way. It definitely hypes you up. You are pumped.
Right. And that lends itself to bleed into the next song, which is song number 3 on side 2, Hang On To Yourself. Because we just talked about like Little Richard, Jerry Lee, having that tribute. This could easily have been his tribute to Eddie Cochran in Summertime Blues.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
But, Ken, you and I have talked about this so many times on this show. If your goal is to perform, your goal is to get people out of their seats and shaking their rear.
Yep.
This is that song.
Shaking or swaying.
Shaking or swaying. I like the way you said that. Shaking or swaying. Okay? This is that song. This is, hey, get up. I brought you down with Lady Stardust. I brought you back up with Star. Now I want you to stand up and start shaking.
Yeah. What's interesting about this song when I heard it and I listened to it, so going back to the people we grew up listening to and how they all was citing Bowie as an influence, and glam Bowie, Ziggy Stardust in particular. Listen to this album, early outside one, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's establishing himself. When I got to this track, this particular track, I heard it, and to me, I was able to say, okay, the different touring bands that I've seen in the States come across, not big name bands, but cats that I've met that I know across the country. This is the track that I'm like, wow, okay, there it is. I can hear it. There's that. I would just hit the I believe button when y'all mentioned your Bowie influence. Bam, there it is. And matter of fact, because I need to point this out after I passed it up, I wanted to say side one, but you could even do it with this song. So the 90s glam revival, whatnot. Take one of these
Which
tracks.
90s glam revival? Give the people out there a little bit.
Okay, in particular, Space Hog.
Okay.
You know, yeah, again, hit the I believe button, didn't really listen to this.
Supergrass was a T-Rex tribute band. Straight up. And this, Bowie was directly influenced by Mark Bolan and T-Rex at this period. So you're right. This that whole frame of mind.
There. You can take these tracks, mute the vocals, and you're like, oh yeah, you can definitely hear the influence and the people and the different artists who said that they love Bowie. Like I said, mute the vocal tracks on this album, and you're like, yep, it definitely influenced you. You can hear it. And like I said, this song in particular. So when lockdown is done and we're back to live music and venues, check out a band. Doesn't have to be a big band, like a big name band. But if they're someone who says they're citing Bowie as an influence, this is the track right here. Listen to this track and you will hear this sound.
Well, what I love about this song is that it's a rock and roll song that makes you shake, right?
Yeah.
But when he gets to the chorus, that's when his voice gets the softest. Come on, you really got a good thing going, right?
Yeah.
He's not yelling. He's not screaming it. Like most times you build up to start belting it out in the chorus. He gets reserved in the chorus even though he's driving the whole time. It's like, look, but the song, let's be real, this song is about sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yep.
I mean, this line is iconic, but then we move like tigers on Vaseline. I mean, come on, man. But that's something that only rock stars get to do.
Yeah.
Or
say.
Yeah. But you understand, he even says in the song, you're the blessed, we're the spiders from Mars. You're blessed because we exist.
Yeah.
That's rock and roll debauchery right there, man.
Straight up.
So the way I always pictured in my head, right, after introducing himself as Lady Stardust and saying, hey, I'm making everybody who's out there want to be rock and roll stars. This is the lifestyle I live. So if there was a movie about a rock band, it's in every rock movie. Bohemian Rhapsody. What's the one with Marky Mark?
Oh yeah, Rockstar.
Every single one, they have that music collage of them going from town to town, running through
the debauchery,
the hotel rooms, doing crazy things on the road, right? The tour bus. This is that song with that playing in the background. Okay? All of those scenes from all of those movies, you collect all of them and you put it with this song in the music video.
I love it, especially going along with your concept theme.
Yes, this is Ziggy at the peak of his powers. Okay, this is the top for Ziggy. Hey, I got the kids following me. I'm a rock and roll star. I'm going to take you on this trip. You better hang on. We're going to move like tigers on Vaseline. Let's go.
Yes.
Right? And only rock stars get to do that. Not the working class out in the fields where it ain't easy. But here, hang on to yourself.
Yep.
Okay. That's how I've always interpreted this song. This is the rock and roll lifestyle.
Yes.
And then every single movie about a rock and roll band plays that part, that little music collage of the band on the road. What's the one with the Almost Famous? They did that there too.
Yep.
Every single one has that part where they show the debauchery of life on the road,
Yep.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then it goes from there to
The title track, Ziggy Stardust, song number 4, side 2.
and what's perfect after that montage, go right debauchery, boom! I am now a bona fide rock star. I am here, and I going along with your concept. It's interesting because when I hear this song is the definition of pomp, glam, grandiose as it starts. And hey, this is him announcing, I am the bona fide rock star. I am.
It's that guitar riff. Mick Ronson, we don't talk about him a lot on this show.
Yeah.
But Mick Ronson is, like you said earlier, a guitar god.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a couple of riffs, right? Ba-da,
Da-da-da-da-da. Yep.
dude, you start off a song like that and then have Woody Woodmansey come in and just start banging away on those drums. This is like, even though the drums aren't like a main instrument, he's not going to drum solo. The way those drums are thundering
Oh, yeah.
in this song.
This is definitely a showcase of the band.
Yeah, absolutely, including Bowie, because even when his voice comes in with that little like scream that he does, oh yeah, it's like, but it drags, it pulls you along. To me, this song was what kind of converted me to being an obsessed David Bowie fan.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because I'd always heard Lady Suffragette City on the air.
Yeah.
Right, as a pop hit. I heard Space Oddity. But it was when I heard Ziggy Stardust and Suffragette City back to back, I said, oh, they go together. Can't separate them.
Like, I get it now.
I get it. But this song alone, okay, this is where all of them are featured, even though it's really just the narrative about Ziggy, right?
And, yeah.
It's a storytelling song.
And that's
about
perfect.
Ziggy.
Because, again, that is he'll present, I'm Ziggy.
Here are my spiders.
Spiders, yes.
Yes.
And the bass on this song is no joke.
See, and I wasn't even thinking about the bass because the drums were just thundering along.
But like you said, you hit it on the head. This is full out presentation, the entire band.
And sad fact that the drummer, Woody Woodmansey, he's the only surviving member of the Spiders who's with us.
Yeah.
But then we look at Mick Ronson, because his guitar really is defining the Spider sound in this time period. And there's a cool Mick Ronson story I want to say. So a good friend of mine, Elwood, all right, you've met Elwood before.
Elwood,
a good friend of mine. He owns a guitar, okay, and I got to hold this guitar. It was originally owned by Mick Ronson. Okay, it's a 1950 something Gibson Les Paul. He sells it to Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols.
Yep.
Elwood knew Steve Jones. I don't know how he knew him, but he knows him or knew him or whatever. Steve Jones needed money to fix his motorcycle, so he sells Elwood this guitar that he owned that used to belong to Mick Ronson, and now Elwood owns it. And so I told Elwood, I said, you're guitar owner number 3 of that guitar. Eventually, I'm going to be guitar owner number 4. He said, yeah, when you're able to put my kids through college, then you can own this guitar.
Yeah.
So as soon as I make enough money to put Elwood's kids through college, man, that guitar is mine. But Elwood, yeah, we're going to do a whole show about Elwood. Actually, I am going to do a show with Elwood eventually.
And that's going to rock.
Yeah. But Mick Ronson, he went on after he stopped playing with Bowie, after Bowie fired him. He actually joined Ian Hunter's band. And Ian Hunter was the lead singer of Mott the Hoople, who David Bowie was hit for.
Yeah.
All the young dudes. And so he actually joined Ian Hunter's band in the late 70s.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they're still there, interconnected. Anyway, I had to tell Elwood's story, but for me, this is I always consider this a title track. It's one of the greatest title tracks ever written, ever written. Like, you think about great title tracks, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, right? What are some other? Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, yeah.
Okay. I'm sure there's others. I like Queen's The Game a lot, like play the game, okay? But you think about great title tracks. To me, Ziggy Stardust is one of the greatest title tracks. Young Americans, another David Bowie song. One of my absolutely favorite David Bowie songs of all time. You're laughing at me, man.
No, because I'm laughing in agreement, man. I get to, unlike everyone else, I'm watching you as you're stoked about this. And again, earlier when you asked why we do this, dude, we've been doing this for 30 years, and here we are. And you're still getting just as stoked today
as I was 30 years ago.
As we now as grown men, as when we were kids.
Absolutely.
I love it, man.
I can't stop it, man. Anyway, so lyrically, this song's pretty straightforward. It's talking about the spiders from Mars and their relationship with Ziggy. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But this is kind of the hangover to the rock and roll party. This is what the public doesn't see. The jealousy, the egos, right? Like there's a line on here. And I pitched this to you, okay? So we bitched about his fans and should we crush his sweet hands. That's the other spiders kind of pissed off at Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
Like just resenting that front man with all that ego and all that sex.
Yeah, when you build the machine and you have that front man out there. Yeah.
No, but that's what it is, right? And we've seen bands break up.
Yeah.
Van Halen's done it a couple of times.
Yeah. They just don't know how to roll with the front man. Or the front man doesn't necessarily remember they're part of the band.
Guns N' Roses with Axl Rose.
Boom.
Did it. So that's honestly, this is when the band's breaking up internally, right?
Yeah.
And there's a line in this where he says, making love with his ego, Ziggy sucked up into his mind, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly that front man syndrome going on, where he's so consumed with himself, he lost the plot along the way. Okay, and then when the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. So this is the story of how the Spiders from Mars broke up. In my head, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It says like when the kids had killed the man, but I didn't take when the kids had killed the man literally, like that the audience actually stabbed him in the heart and killed him.
Yeah,
I always took it as when they had killed what made him human, which made us relate to him in the first place, or I guess alien, but which made him likable. All of those likable qualities went away when his fame and fortune went to his head.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And that's where I always took that. I never took it because the death is later on. But we're not there. So Ziggy Stardust you can end it here. But on the track, there is no space. On the album, there is no space between this and the next song, Suffragette City. It fades. Ziggy Stardust fades right into that loud bombast of Suffragette City.
Yeah.
And that, again, that driving piano, and what sounds like a saxophone. But it's not a saxophone. You can't talk about David Bowie's sax playing on this song. Because that sax sound, David Bowie, one of the most proficient saxophone players at this time, right? Plays it all over this album, uses a synthesizer on this song that sounds like a saxophone. I thought, dude, for 30 years, I thought it was a saxophone, man. Did you know that was a synthesizer?
I knew it wasn't him.
I didn't. I thought it was him. I thought it was a sax the whole time. Anyway, this is the radio staple. This is the song I had heard here in America, the entire time I've been a David Bowie fan.
Yeah, you are correct. This is the track. This is, David Bowie, 70s on the radio, Suffragette City. 70s rock song, no doubt. That full out, balls out, just going sound. What I like about it, and with everything, the other things you point out in the album, where he plays dynamics and he goes in a direction he identifies the sound and style, but goes in a different direction that's anticipated what you would expect. Full out 70s rock song, not heavy blues influence, which I think is what helps to separate this one from the other rock songs of the time.
Well, this is also a lot of like, and you saw it in a lot of like those glam bands from England around the time where they played like that boogie music.
Yeah.
You know, that pub rock.
Pub, yeah.
Right. That's really what this is. It's kind of that pub rock sound that was really popular at the time in England.
Which is cool because, again, popular in England. Us here in Texas listening to it, it's a nice little different shot in the arm, if you will.
And I addressed this earlier, Ken, but I really think it's true. I can't listen to Ziggy Stardust, the song, without Suffragette City. To me, they might as well be We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. They belong together. They're Sgt. Pepper along with a little help from my friends.
Yeah.
You need both of them. It's just the way I've always heard it. You know, which is weird because when I listened to classic rock radio as a kid, it was just Suffragette City.
Exactly. It wasn't presented that way.
But it was also on classic rock radio where I first heard Ziggy played with Suffragette City. But it was like on a Sunday. I don't know if you remember, like on Sunday mornings, they'd have like these pre-recorded radio shows that were national.
Yep.
And they did like a little tribute to David Bowie and his influence or something. This was back in the 80s when he was like pop star dancing with Mick Jagger, you know, with horrible neon suits.
But he dressed well, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay, whatever. But the point was that once I heard the songs together, Ziggy Stardust along with Suffragette City, I need them together now.
Yeah.
Even though I had heard Suffragette City by itself originally on the radio, I can't isolate the two from each other. They're two peas in a pod. When I hear, because I've actually heard Ziggy Stardust on classic rock radio more than Suffragette City over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
When I hear Ziggy Stardust and they don't jump right into Suffragette City, it throws my balance off, man. I have to rush to find Suffragette City somewhere so I can listen to it real quick. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. So part of the lyrics that we've talked about, my interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay, because the whole Ziggy story's coming together, right?
Yeah.
The rise or the dissension of this alien coming to expose these Earthlings to this, what did he call Mama Papa, right?
Yeah.
This, you know, this guy, his you know, arrival on Earth, his ascent to becoming this rock star that the children worship, to then his ego consuming him, right?
Yeah.
Until the band's broken up. But Suffragette City, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with the suffrage movement, right? It was the first time I had ever heard the word suffragette.
Oh, yeah. Same here.
Okay, I had no idea what it meant at the time. I just knew it was there. I hadn't been taught about suffrage, right? I was like, oh, should we talk about the women's suffrage movement, Ken? Their right to vote?
100 years today.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, I had no idea at the time. So David Bowie taught me a new word, okay, put it in my vocabulary. But this song has nothing to do with women's suffrage.
Yep.
Has nothing to do. This song is about the rock star still partying and getting laid long after his time. That's absolutely what this song is about.
Yeah.
It's
the mileage out of his fame.
But in terms of where it fits on this album, the band's broken up. The star has fallen, man. But he's still partying like a rock star.
Yeah.
Right? Do you see where...
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I love your interpretation.
Yeah, I really think it's there. But he's also throwing in things that are part of the time period. Like where he says, hey, man, Droogie, don't crash here. The Droogs are from Clockwork Orange.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, or Wham Bam, thank you, ma'am. All right.
Yeah, probably the most iconic line.
One of the most iconic lines in rock
music.
history.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Those are the little types of... I'm at a loss for words. Help me fill in the words. Touches, accents that help take good songs and make them great, or take great songs and make them iconic. right? Because
Yeah.
he just stops the music right at the end. Everyone's driving along and stops.
Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun, dun, dun. You know, those little touches in rock songs can mean all the difference in where you put it on the scale of importance, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's finish this album off, Ken. This has been a long ride. This is our longest show yet. I don't even care.
Doesn't matter.
Does not matter, because this is one of the most important albums of my lifetime. Final song on the album, Rock and Roll Suicide.
Yeah.
We've used this word a lot, and it might sound redundant, but it's epic. It's an epic ending to an album. But what I love about it is we talked about how sparse 5 years was to open the album.
Yes.
Rock and Roll Suicide does that to end it. It's just him and a guitar and a cigarette.
Yeah.
Strumming along. Just him and an acoustic guitar. And then eventually it builds and builds, and you get the full orchestral treatment to make the whole album collapse.
Yeah. I like how, again, we've pointed it out, the rise, the fall, and this is a perfect homage to his influences throughout his early musical influence, that style, that early rock and roll. And hey, I wouldn't say went out with a bang, but after his descent, and he's going out the way he came in, and roll.
I don't know if that's how I interpret it. I took it as where before, because of his ego, you couldn't feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
It's almost like you felt sorry for him, like you felt pity for this person who had it all and pissed it away. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, yeah.
That's where I interpret it lyrically. But just the theme, and this is an uncomfortable theme to talk about, is rock and roll suicides. We've seen it throughout.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a lot of it in recent years. Let's name. I mean, Kurt Cobain,
Cornell.
Chris Cornell, the guy from Linkin Park.
Yeah.
What's his name? Chester
Bennington. Yeah.
Okay, the guys from Badfinger, Pete Ham and Tom Evans. They had 2 members of their band commit suicide.
Yeah.
We're going to save that because we're going to talk about Badfinger on another show. Probably the most tragic story in rock and roll history, honestly. Del Shannon committed suicide. The singer from Boston, Brad Delp. So many people who had so much more talent than I will ever have decided life wasn't worth living. And Bowie's singing about it. He's capturing it here.
Yeah.
This is not a pleasant topic. It's not a pleasant way to end the album. It's not a peak. It's kind of like graveling in the dirt, but the song is so epic and powerful, you're compelled to listen to it. So you're listening to pain. When he's screaming, "You're not alone," he's screaming it.
Yeah. I love your concept of this album, man, because it fits the rise and fall. And if you, again,
Well, that's the name of the album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy
yeah,
Stardust.
and that's what I'm saying, because it fits your concept. I can see the story. I can listen to it. And again, don't want to, well, I'm going to say like an opera, like a musical story, a musical, whatever term you want to use. I can hear it. I can see it. I'm following along with it. And how does a rock star go out? That's how a rock star goes out.
And for Bowie constructed these songs individually. He had this idea of what Ziggy Stardust was, obviously, in this narrative. But it wasn't like The Who's Tommy, where you have a beginning of the story, a middle, and an ending, where it clearly tells you about this journey of Tommy the Pinball Wizard, right?
Yeah.
Like The Who clearly mapped out a story with a plot line, whereas Bowie wrote a bunch of songs and then made this loose construction of what could be called an album. But because in my 15-year-old head, I thought that this album was meant to be played as a story, I constructed a story out of his words and the sounds that were coming out.
And that's the great thing, because he wove it together and left it loose enough for a teenage Will to listen to it and flush the rest out. You know, because that's what music used to do. It used to provide you a framework to flush out a story with your imagination. We're used to, 21st century. We don't do that anymore. It's all fed to us, every step, every sentence. Here, you took advantage of what Bowie laid.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, this album, the reason it means so much to me is because I had always seen music through a very narrow prism. Okay?
Okay.
Very narrow worldview. I only had one paradigm. That was heavy metal or hard rock.
Yeah.
All right? That was it. The Beatles opened that up. They opened up the worldview. But then Bowie reinforced it, and this was the first album, because before it was songs or sounds, like Beatles songs opened up my worldview. This was an entire album. And there's a hard rock feel to a lot of these songs, don't get me wrong. But an entire album that says, hey, you only like hard rock? Well, you know what? I like soul. Oh, wait. There was too much soul for you? Let me give you two of the hardest chords starting off Moon Age Daydream, right? Oh, you want to know where I came from? You know, you grew up in the 70s and 80s. I grew up in the 50s and 60s. Listen to my influences. Oh, but let me drop it down a little bit and go into Lady Stardust, right? Oh, now I'm going to pick you up. Now I'm going to give you two more of the hardest guitar riffs before I scream my head off and telling you what's going on in the title track. And then I'm going to talk about the rock and roll lifestyle a little bit more before I bring you down with my rock and roll suicide. He takes you on a journey. You think you're going left, you go right. You go right, you think you keep going right. No, we're going to go left. He's going to take you up, going to take you down. I never experienced anything like that in an album before. Because I'm serious, man. Most rock albums are heavy metal albums. Even if they have a ballad or two on the album, it's still one genre.
Yeah.
And Bowie saying, no, throw everything, all your preconceived notions of genre out the window, because I'm not going to let you get comfortable with any one sound. And that's why this album is so important to me, because it changed my life. It changed the way I view music. It allowed me to say, oh, those guys are wearing makeup? Well, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Oh, those guys are playing instruments that I'm not comfortable with. Okay. And I've told you on the show, we talked about it on the show. I don't like synthesizers as the featured instrument, but it could work. You know, I'm not a saxophone fan, but I love it when Bowie's playing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is why this album, it challenges me to be a better listener of music. So, Ken, you don't have this same experience with this album that I do. But you did listen to all the songs. Do you see why it's such an influential album? Not just for me, but I mean, this is something that we've seen it, man. Every rock critic, 5 stars, 10 stars, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, no, after listening to it, and even before hearing your interpretation, which I love, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I could definitely hear why this album has stood the test of time, why the critics have loved and continue to love this album.
Now, you and I have a rule that we're not going to cover in more than one album from an artist in any given year. You and I have laid out a year worth of albums we're going to cover, and there's not one repeat album from an artist, right? Like
Correct.
One Rolling Stones album, one Beatles album, one Bowie album.
Yeah.
We might have to make an exception and do Hunky Dory before the year's out, man. Because that album, I discovered that at a different time than Ziggy Stardust. It doesn't mean as much to me emotionally, but it means just as much to me as a music fan. I'm not saying we're going to. I'm just saying if there was an exception to our rule,
this would be it.
That would be it, absolutely. So this is where in the show, Ken, I'm going to ask you favorite song and least favorite song.
My favorite song, which I'm interested or glad you asked because we can kind of see eye to eye. Moon Age Daydream, brother.
Oh, I love it.
Is my favorite song.
Such
on
a
this
great
album.
song. Such a great song. Kim, there was a band that you and I went to go see, an outlaw country band, the Beaumonts. Do you remember
Yep,
when
I
you
remember
were
that.
opening for them?
Yeah,
With the
Riley's
Mondellos.
Tavern, yeah.
Okay, so when you were opening for them, they finished their set, with Moon Age Daydream. They didn't sound like Bowie's version. I just thought it was so cool that I was able to see that song live.
Yeah.
With somebody covering it, somebody playing it, because it's too late, man. Bowie's gone. The Spiders are gone, man. We're never going to be able to see them play the song. But I got to see it played by somebody. I thought it was the coolest experience, man.
Yeah, I remember you lit up. You were real stoked and talked with them about it afterwards.
Yeah,
and they were
talking with you.
surprised.
Yeah, no, I couldn't believe somebody was actually playing Moon Age Daydream, man. It warmed my heart, man. So, what's your least favorite?
My least favorite, I'm just gonna say it ain't easy.
Okay,
Because, dude, you're like trying to tell me to pick the ugly girl from Destiny's Child. It doesn't exist. There isn't a sorry song on this album.
no, there really isn't, and I've already mentioned my favorites were Starman and Lady Stardust. Those are my two favorite songs on this album. If you would have asked me 15 years ago, probably would have said Ziggy Stardust along with Suffragette City. It changes with time.
Yeah.
But the song I'm listening to the most these days is one that I grew to appreciate as I got older. And we've talked about that a lot too, about songs we appreciate more now than we did when we were younger. So Love. By far one of my favorite songs on the album. It's moving up the charts. If this was the pop charts, if this was the Billboard pop charts, So Love is the one that's moving up the fastest. So if we were to do this same show, or if you were to ask me when we do Hunky Dory, so what's your favorite album on Ziggy Stardust? I know we're doing Hunky Dory, but I want to know today. It might be So Love. And I can't. This is when I'm going to cop out. And I always say, hey, don't cop out. Don't try and be a diplomat.
Yeah.
I can't pick a least favorite song. I would have told you before you and I were prepping for the show that it was 5 years. No contest. But that's one of those weird songs where the more I listen to it, the more I like it. So I don't want to say it's my least favorite because it's also one of the few that, because I didn't appreciate it when I was younger,
Yeah.
and because I can't listen to this album at all without it, I don't know if it's my least favorite because it's necessary, it's mandatory. And I think the other closest one would be Star. But I love that one too. Like, I'm not going to stop listening to Star. So, I mean, I guess they're my least favorite, but not really.
So you can't pick the ugly girl in Destiny's Child is what you're saying.
No. No. There's no way. So anyway, that's where I stand on that. But a truly classic, iconic album, an absolute sonic, emotional roller coaster of an experience. This album is not just an album, it's an experience. Jimi Hendrix, right, wasn't just a band, it was the Jimi Hendrix experience. This album is something you experience. It's not just something you listen to.
Yeah. No, this was definitely a well thought out, constructed work of art by David Bowie.
I agree. And for everyone out there listening, if you're still with us, an hour and a half in, let us know what your favorite songs are. Do you even have a least favorite song on this album? I mean, there might be people who love the rock songs, can't stand something like Soul Love because it's not hard rock enough. But if you do have a least favorite song, let us know that too, and we'll talk about it in the comments. Ken, you always ask this question. I'm going to ask it. If you've seen David Bowie live and play any of these songs, just tell me because I'll never get to have that experience.
Yeah.
I'll never know what that feels like. I miss my chance because he's gone. He doesn't live with us anymore.
Yeah.
So if you've seen him live and you've had that experience, let us know about that.
Please. Or if you know any of the other members of the band, if you have any David Bowie story you want to share with us, let us know. We love to learn.
No, I agree with you. And if you enjoyed today's show, hit like. And if you want to hear more shows from us and continue to hear more shows, please subscribe to our channel. Until next time, bye-bye.